There are moments in history in which the act of vying for control, position, authority is not just absurd, it's unethical. This lesson is manifest in the Egyptian experience of the last and most extreme of the Makot, Makat Bechorot, the plague of the firstborn. The Torah describes in Parshat Bo how the plague is meant to happen and then how it actually happens in the moment. Umeit kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. This is the forecast of what should happen, that all of the firstborns, mi bechor paro hayoshev al kiso ad bechor hashivcha asher achar harechaim bechol bechor behema. The entire spectrum of firstborns in Egyptian society, ranging from the firstborn of the kingdom, Paro's son himself, all the way down to the lowly maidservant. And the animals are affected as well. That's what is forecasted. However, when the Torah describes in the next parak what happens on the day or at the moment of the plague itself, we see something slightly different. Vahi b'chatzi halayla, the clock struck midnight. V'Hashem hika kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim, and Hashem himself directly smote every firstborn in Egypt, mi bechor paro hayoshev al kiso, from the firstborn in the palace, ad bechor hashvi asher bebeit habor, until the firstborn of the prisoner sitting in the jail cell, v'kol bechor behema, as well as the firstborn animals. So we see the animals are the same, and the beginning point of the kingdom and the aristocracy is the same, but there is a shift here from the shivcha, from the firstborn of the maidservant, to the firstborn of the shvi, of the prisoner. How do we understand that shift? What changed from the forecast to the actual manifestation of the plague? The Rashbam, the 11th century literalist, explains that really we're referring to the same category, the same class, just as the shivcha, just as the servants would sit at the mills and and grind the grain, so too that was a task that was given to the prisoners. So it's really a synonymous. They are really referring to the same thing. It's the same class of people. However, the Chizkuni, the 13th century French commentator, says something striking. He says that actually one class became a different class as a result of the plague happening. What does he mean? He says that the slave class mocked their masters as the plague hit their masters first, meaning to say that the firstborns of the aristocracy were affected by the plague before the lowest rungs of society. And when that happened in that order, the slaves took a moment to gloat and mock their masters, to say, "Ha, look at you, you're no better, you're no superior than us." They used the moment as an opportunity to raise themselves and to control, to have more control and position in their own lives. And as a result, the masters were so offended and put off by them, they had them arrested and sent into prison. They took the slave class and they imprisoned them. And so by the time the plague got to the lowest rungs of society, there was no longer a slave class, but instead there was a larger class of prisoners who were affected by the devastation of their firstborns being killed. So this seems like an absurd explanation to try and justify the shift in the Torah from the shivcha to the shvi. But I think what's behind this explanation of the Chizkuni is that when there are moments and opportunities for people to gain some kind of stature or some kind of position, then sometimes that that opportunity is seized inappropriately, even at the expense of their own suffering that is about to happen, and the suffering that's going to be caused to others by seizing this moment inappropriately. And I think that our country is at one of those moments. As we look towards the federal government and see the shutdown that is continuing to go on, now the second longest in U.S. history, I think that we are seeing politicians who are vying for position and for power in ways that are completely absurd and even unethical. As I said at the very beginning, they are seizing this moment inappropriately in order to put themselves a little bit higher on the rungs of power, and they are ignoring the fact that almost 1 million people are without pay. Many families are furloughed and are suffering because of the parochialism and the selfishness of many of our members of government. And there are families and friends that I know in Maryland who are having difficulty after almost a paycheck, not two paychecks not going through, with getting to mortgage payments and even day school tuition. And so I hope that our government can come to their senses and do their job, as Belichick would say, to fund the government and to ensure that the good people who are providing the services that so many of us depend on are compensated and are able to support their families. I pray that this should happen soon before I see you in Shul on Shabbos.